The courtroom was a pressure cooker, air thick with whispers and the weight of judgment. Marcus Avery, a broad-shouldered man with graying temples, sat shackled at the defendant's table, his hazel eyes fixed on the floor. He wasn't just fighting for his freedom. He was fighting for his family, for the life he'd built with his husband, Julian, and their son, Ethan. It had all unraveled in a single night. A routine traffic stop in their quiet Philadelphia suburb spiraled into chaos when Marcus, a black man, was accused of resisting arrest. The officer's report painted him as belligerent, a threat. But Marcus knew the truth. He'd been targeted. His identity as a gay man in a same-sex marriage twisted into a weapon against him. The real story lay with Ethan, their 17-year-old son, who'd witnessed it all from the passenger seat, and whose testimony could change everything. The judge's gavel cracked, silencing the room. Marcus glanced at Julian, seated in the front row, his warm brown eyes rimmed with worry but steady with love. Ethan sat beside him, clutching a sketchbook, his knuckles white. This was their fight now, and it started with a night no one saw coming. Marcus Avery had always been the rock of their family, a high school history teacher with a laugh that filled rooms. He carried himself with a quiet strength that made his students adore him and his husband, Julian Rivera, feel safe. Julian, a Puerto Rican graphic designer with a knack for turning chaos into art, was the dreamer to Marcus's anchor. Together, they'd adopted Ethan at age 5, a bright-eyed foster kid who'd spent too many years feeling unwanted. 12 years later, their home in Chestnut Hill was a haven of love, laughter, and the occasional teenage sulk. That night, October 12, 2024, started like any other. Marcus and Ethan were driving home from a late soccer practice, the car filled with the hum of classic rock on the radio. Ethan, lanky and introspective, was sketching in his notebook, his pencil scratching out the lines of a superhero he'd been designing for weeks. Marcus glanced over, grinning. "That guy gonna save the world someday, kid?" Ethan smirked. "Maybe, if he doesn't get grounded first." They were still chuckling when the red and blue lights flashed behind them. Marcus's grip tightened on the steering wheel. "Stay calm, Ethan," he said, his voice steady but laced with an edge Ethan rarely heard. Marcus pulled over on a quiet stretch of Germantown Avenue, the streetlights casting long shadows. The officer, a stocky man with a buzz cut, approached, his flashlight blinding. "License and registration," the officer barked, his tone clipped. Marcus complied, his movements deliberate. Ethan watched, his heart picking up speed. Something felt off. "Step out of the vehicle," the officer said, his voice colder now. Marcus frowned but obeyed, his hands visible. Ethan's stomach churned. He'd heard his dads talk about moments like this, moments where the world saw Marcus's black skin before it saw the man who'd stayed up late helping him with algebra or cheered loudest at his games. "What's the problem, officer?" Marcus asked, his tone polite but firm. The officer's eyes narrowed, landing on the rainbow sticker on the car's bumper, a small emblem of pride from a local LGBTQ+ event. "You got a problem with authority?" he snapped, stepping closer. Ethan's breath caught. He saw his dad's shoulders tense, but Marcus kept his cool. "No, sir. Just asking what I did." Things escalated fast. The officer claimed Marcus was acting aggressive, though Ethan saw no such thing. When Marcus questioned the accusation, the officer grabbed his arm, twisting it behind his back. Marcus stumbled, trying to stay calm, but the officer shouted, "Stop resisting!" Ethan's heart pounded as he fumbled for his phone, hitting record. "Dad!" Ethan yelled, his voice cracking. Marcus turned his head, his eyes locking on Ethan's. "Stay in the car," he said, firm but calm, even as the cuffs snapped onto his wrists. By the time Julian arrived at the police station, Marcus was booked for resisting arrest and disorderly conduct. The officer's report was damning. Marcus had lunged at him, refused compliance, and posed a threat. Julian's hands shook as he read it, his mind racing. Ethan, still clutching his sketchbook, couldn't speak. The video on his phone told a different story. But would anyone believe a kid? The next morning, their small community buzzed with gossip. Chestnut Hill, with its cobblestone streets and progressive veneer, wasn't immune to prejudice. Whispers followed Julian as he dropped Ethan off at school. "Did you hear? Marcus attacked a cop." Those kinds of families always cause trouble. Julian kept his head high, but inside he was unraveling. He'd spent his life proving he belonged, first as a Puerto Rican kid in a mostly white neighborhood, then as a gay man building a family with Marcus. Now it felt like the world was trying to tear it all down. Ethan, meanwhile, was drowning in guilt. He replayed the night in his head, wondering if he could have done more, said something different. At school, his best friend, Lila, a sharp-witted 17-year-old with a nose ring, pulled him aside. "You okay, E? People are talking." "Let them," Ethan muttered, but his voice wavered. He showed Lila the video, the shaky footage capturing the officer's aggression and Marcus's restraint. "This could help him, right?" Lila nodded, her eyes fierce. "You need to show this to someone. A lawyer. The news. Somebody." That night, Julian and Ethan sat at the kitchen table, a lawyer on speakerphone. Sarah Cohen, a fierce advocate for civil rights, listened as Ethan described the arrest. "Send me the video," she said. "This could be a game changer." But Marcus, out on bail the next day, wasn't so sure. "They'll twist it," he said, his voice heavy. "They always do. They'll say I provoked him, that I'm a threat because of who I am." Julian reached for his hand, their fingers lacing together. "We fight this, Marcus. For Ethan. For us." Ethan watched them, his chest tight. He'd always known his dads were strong, but seeing them face this, together, lit something inside him. He wasn't just their kid anymore. He was their witness. The trial loomed like a storm cloud. Sarah prepared them for the worst. The officer, James Carter, had a clean record and a reputation for tough but fair policing. The prosecution would lean hard on his story, painting Marcus as the aggressor. Ethan's video was their best shot, but it wasn't perfect, shaky, with moments obscured by darkness. Sarah warned them the defense would need more than footage. They'd need Ethan to take the stand. "You don't have to do this," Marcus told Ethan one night, his voice soft. They were in the backyard, the air crisp with fall. "It's a lot to ask." Ethan shook his head. "I was there, Dad. I saw what happened. I'm not letting them lie about you." Marcus pulled him into a hug, and for a moment, Ethan felt like the little boy who'd first called Marcus Dad. But he wasn't that kid anymore. He was ready to fight. The courthouse in downtown Philadelphia was a gray monolith, its steps slick with early November rain. Inside, the air was stale, heavy with the scent of old wood and tension. Marcus sat beside Sarah Cohen, his jaw tight, as the prosecution laid out their case. Officer Carter took the stand first, his voice steady, almost rehearsed. He described Marcus as combative and uncooperative, claiming he'd feared for his safety. The jury, a mix of older white men, a few women of color, and a young guy with a man bun, listened intently. Julian, in the gallery, felt his stomach twist. He knew how these stories played out, how a black man's every move could be spun into a threat. Ethan sat beside Julian, his sketchbook open but untouched. He'd drawn Officer Carter's face in his notebook, the sharp angles of his jaw exaggerated, his eyes cold. It was his way of processing, of holding on to control when everything felt like it was slipping away. Julian squeezed his shoulder. "You've got this, kid," he whispered. Sarah cross-examined Carter with surgical precision. "You stated Mr. Avery lunged at you," she said, her voice calm but piercing. "Can you describe the exact motion?" Carter hesitated, his confidence flickering. He moved forward, aggressively, like he was going to attack. "Forward," Sarah pressed. "In what way?" Arms raised, fists clenched. Carter shifted in his seat. "It was fast. I reacted to protect myself." Sarah introduced Ethan's video, projecting it onto a screen for the jury. The footage was grainy, but it showed Marcus standing still, hands visible, his voice calm as he asked, "What's the problem, officer?" The moment Carter grabbed Marcus's arm was clear, as was Marcus's stumble. Not a lunge, but a reaction to being yanked. Murmurs rippled through the courtroom. Carter's face reddened. But the prosecution was ready. They argued the video was inconclusive, that Ethan's angle didn't capture the full context. They called a second officer, Carter's partner, who backed his story, claiming Marcus had escalated the situation. Julian's hands clenched in his lap. He wanted to scream, to tell the jury this was about more than a traffic stop. It was about who Marcus was, who they were as a family. Outside the courtroom, the case was gaining traction. A local news outlet had picked up the story, framing it as a potential case of police overreach. Social media buzzed, with justice for Marcus trending on X. But not everyone was supportive. Anonymous comments flooded Julian's inbox, calling Marcus a thug, and worse, targeting their family for being different. Ethan saw one post that made his blood boil. "Kids shouldn't be raised by people like that." He wanted to fire back, but Julian stopped him. "Save your energy for the stand," he said. "That's where you'll make a difference." Ethan spent nights preparing with Sarah. She coached him to stay calm, to stick to the facts. "They'll try to trip you up," she warned. "They'll question your memory, your bias as Marcus's son. Just tell the truth." The truth. Ethan clung to it like a lifeline. He remembered every detail of that night. The way the officer's flashlight had blinded him, the fear in his dad's voice, masked by calm. He'd always seen Marcus as unshakable, but that night, he'd seen something else. Vulnerability. It made him love his dad even more. When Ethan took the stand, the courtroom felt like it was holding its breath. He was 17, lanky, with a mop of brown hair and eyes that carried too much weight for a kid his age. He wore a navy blazer Julian had picked out, but his sneakers peeked out beneath, a reminder he was still a teenager. The jury watched him closely, some with sympathy, others with skepticism. Sarah started gently. "Ethan, can you walk us through what happened on October 12th? Ethan's voice trembled at first but grew steadier. "We were driving home from soccer practice. Dad was joking about my sketches. Then the lights came on behind us. He pulled over and the Officer Carter, came up. He seemed angry from the start. He described the escalation, how Carter's tone shifted when he saw the rainbow sticker, how he grabbed Marcus without warning. Dad didn't lunge," Ethan said, his voice firm. "He was trying to stay calm, to keep me calm. He told me to stay in the car." The prosecution's attorney, a wiry man with a sharp suit, pounced during cross-examination. "You're Mr. Avery's son, correct? You'd do anything to protect him, wouldn't you?" Ethan's jaw tightened. "I'm telling the truth. I saw what happened. You were scared, emotional. Maybe you didn't see everything clearly? I saw enough. Ethan shot back, his voice rising. Sarah gave him a subtle nod, urging him to stay composed. He took a breath. I recorded it. The video shows what I saw. The attorney tried to poke holes, suggesting Ethan's loyalty clouded his judgment. But Ethan didn't waver. He looked at Marcus, who gave him a small, proud smile, and then at Julian, whose eyes glistened with tears. For the first time, Ethan felt like he wasn't just their kid, he was their equal, fighting alongside them. That night, the family sat in their living room, the TV muted as a news anchor discussed the case. Marcus was quiet, his arm around Julian. Ethan sat cross-legged on the floor, sketching. You were incredible today, Marcus said finally, his voice thick. I'm so proud of you. Ethan looked up, his pencil pausing. I just told the truth, Dad. Sometimes that's the hardest thing, Julian said, his voice soft. But it's the most powerful. The trial wasn't over, but something had shifted. Ethan's testimony had cracked the prosecution's narrative, and the video was gaining traction online. Supporters rallied outside the courthouse, holding signs that read, "Love is not a crime." But the fight was far from won. Carter's team was digging in, and rumors swirled that they'd try to discredit Ethan next. The trial's second week brought a storm of scrutiny. The prosecution pivoted, painting Ethan as an unreliable witness. They called a psychologist to testify about teenage impulsivity, suggesting Ethan's emotions had skewed his memory. They even dug into his school records, highlighting a suspension from 2 years ago for a minor prank, trying to chip away at his credibility. Ethan sat in the gallery, his stomach churning, as the attorney implied he was just a kid with a grudge. Sarah fought back, introducing character witnesses. Ethan's art teacher, who praised his thoughtfulness, and Lila, who spoke fiercely about his honesty. But the damage was done. Doubt lingered in the jury's eyes, and Marcus felt it like a weight on his chest. He'd always taught Ethan to stand tall, but now his son was under fire for defending him. Outside the courtroom, the case was splitting the community. A local church group protested, claiming Marcus's arrest was divine justice for his lifestyle. Julian, usually the optimist, felt his hope fraying. He spent nights designing flyers for a community rally, pouring his pain into bold colors and words, truth over hate. Ethan helped, sketching logos that captured their family's strength. But at home, the tension was palpable. Marcus was quieter, his laughter rare. Julian caught him staring out the window late at night, lost in thought. You okay? Julian asked one evening, sliding his arms around Marcus's waist. Marcus sighed. I hate that Ethan's in the middle of this. He's just a kid. He's our kid, Julian said, his voice fierce. He's stronger than you think. The next blow came unexpectedly. A local blogger, known for stirring controversy, posted an article claiming Ethan had edited the video to make Carter look worse. The post spread like wildfire on X, amplified by accounts that called Marcus a dangerous influence. Julian was livid, but Sarah urged calm. We'll debunk it in court, she said. Focus on what we can control. Sarah called a digital forensics expert to verify the video's authenticity. The expert, a wiry woman with a no-nonsense demeanor, confirmed the footage was unaltered, time-stamped the night of the arrest. The jury seemed swayed, but the prosecution wasn't done. They subpoenaed Ethan's phone, claiming they needed to examine it for further evidence. Sarah fought the motion, arguing it was a fishing expedition, but the judge allowed it. Ethan handed over his phone, his heart sinking. Felt like an invasion, another attempt to silence him. That night, Ethan sat in his room, staring at the blank page of his sketchbook. He felt exposed, like the world was picking apart not just his testimony but his entire life. He started drawing, his pencil moving furiously, creating a scene of a superhero standing against a storm. It was how he saw Marcus, unbreakable even now. The rally Julian organized drew a crowd to Chestnut Hill's main square. Hundreds showed up, holding signs and rainbow flags, chanting for justice. Ethan spoke, his voice shaking at first but growing stronger. "My dad didn't do anything wrong," he said, gripping the microphone. "He's the best person I know, and I'm not going to let anyone lie about him." The crowd cheered, and Julian pulled Ethan into a hug, tears streaming down his face. Marcus, watching from the sidelines, felt a swell of pride but also fear. The rally was a beacon, but it also painted a target on their backs. That night, someone threw a brick through their living room window. A note attached, "Leave town." Marcus wanted to call the police, but Julian stopped him. "They're not on our side," he said, his voice bitter. Instead, they reported it to Sarah, who documented it as evidence of harassment. Ethan, shaken but defiant, taped cardboard over the window and sketched a rainbow over it. "They don't get to win," he said. In court, Sarah turned the tide. She called witnesses who'd seen Carter's pattern of targeting minorities in the neighborhood. A bodega owner recounted a similar stop, where Carter had roughed up a young black man without cause. A trans woman shared how Carter had mocked her during a routine check. The jury's expressions shifted. Doubt was creeping in about Carter's hero cop persona. But the prosecution had one last card. They called a surprise witness, Carter's wife, who tearfully claimed Marcus had threatened her husband's career. It was a low blow, emotional manipulation, and it landed hard. Julian gripped Marcus's hand under the table, whispering, "We're still here. We're still fighting." Ethan, watching from the gallery, felt a fire ignite. He wasn't just fighting for Marcus now, he was fighting for every family like there's every kid who'd ever felt different. He whispered to Lila, who'd snuck into the courtroom, "I'm not done yet." The trial's third week felt like a marathon with no finish line. Marcus was exhausted, his usual warmth dimmed by sleepless nights and the constant strain of public scrutiny. Julian kept the family grounded, cooking elaborate dinners to distract them, but even his optimism wavered. Ethan, though, was a spark of defiance. He'd started posting about the case on X, sharing sketches that told their story, Marcus and Julian laughing together, Ethan as a kid on Marcus's shoulders. His posts went viral, drawing support from across the country. Strangers sent messages of encouragement, some sharing their own stories of injustice. It gave Ethan purpose, but it also made him a target. The prosecution doubled down, questioning Ethan's motives. They suggested he was seeking attention, using the trial to push an agenda. Ethan bristled, but Sarah had prepped him for this. "They want you to lose your cool," she'd said. "Don't give them the satisfaction." When Ethan was called back to the stand, he was ready. The prosecution's attorney leaned in, his tone patronizing. "You've been quite active online, haven't you? Posting about your father's, this case. Are you trying to sway public opinion?" Ethan took a deep breath, his eyes scanning the jury. "I'm telling our story," he said, "because people need to know what really happened. My dad didn't attack anyone. He was protecting me." The attorney smirked. "Protecting you? Or pushing his own narrative?" Sarah objected, but Ethan didn't flinch. "My dad spent his whole life protecting me. Both my dads have. They taught me to tell the truth, even when it's hard. That's why I'm here." The courtroom was silent. Even the judge, a stern woman with gray hair, seemed moved. Ethan's words weren't just about the arrest. They were about love, family, and standing up to a system that too often failed people like them. Outside, the case was becoming a movement. Activists from Philly's LGBTQ+ community organized vigils, and a national civil rights group offered legal support. But the backlash grew too. Marcus's school received complaints from parents, some demanding he be fired. The principal, a longtime ally, stood by him, but the pressure was mounting. Julian's freelance clients started pulling away, citing controversy. The family's savings were dwindling, and the trial's costs were piling up. One night, Ethan overheard his dad's talking in hushed tones. "We might need to sell the house," Marcus said, his voice heavy. Julian protested, but Marcus cut him off. "If it keeps us together, it's worth it." Ethan felt a pang of guilt. He slipped out to the backyard, where Lila was waiting, her bike propped against the fence. "You can't let this break you," she said, handing him a coffee. "You're stronger than that." "I don't feel strong," Ethan admitted. "I feel like I'm making it worse." Lila grabbed his shoulders. "You're making it better. You're showing the world who your dads are. Don't stop." Sarah's closing argument was a masterclass in passion and precision. She replayed Ethan's video, frame by frame, highlighting Carter's aggression. She called back to the witnesses who'd exposed Carter's history, weaving a narrative of systemic bias. "This isn't just about one night," she told the jury. "It's about a man targeted for who he is, a black man, a gay man, a father. Ethan Avery told you the truth. Will you listen?" The prosecution's closing was colder, leaning on Carter's record and the dangers officers face. They urged the jury to focus on the facts, dismissing Ethan's testimony as biased. Julian held Marcus's hand, their fingers trembling. Ethan sat behind them, sketching to keep his hands steady. He drew his dads as superheroes, capes flowing, standing together against a dark sky. As the jury deliberated, the family waited in a small room, the air thick with tension. Marcus tried to lighten the mood, joking about Julian's terrible cooking, but his smile didn't reach his eyes. Ethan hugged them both, whispering, "No matter what, we're still us." Hours later, the jury returned. The foreperson, a woman with kind eyes, stood. "On the charge of resisting arrest, we find the defendant not guilty." Relief flooded the room. Julian sobbed, pulling Marcus into a fierce hug. Ethan felt tears prick his eyes, but he held them back, his heart soaring. The judge dismissed the disorderly conduct charge, citing insufficient evidence. Marcus was free. The courtroom erupted in cheers and gasps as the verdict was read. Marcus stood, his shoulders shaking as he hugged Sarah, then Julian, then Ethan. For the first time in weeks, he felt like he could breathe. Outside, supporters mobbed them, waving signs and chanting Marcus's name. Ethan's sketches had become a symbol, plastered on posters and shared across X. But the victory was bittersweet. The family had won, but the scars remained. Back home, they sat around the kitchen table, the cardboard still taped over the broken window. Julian poured coffee, his hands steadier now. "We made it," he said, his voice thick with emotion. Marcus nodded, but his eyes were distant. "It's not over. Not really. Carter's still out there. The system's still broken." Ethan looked at his dads, his heart full but heavy. "Then we keep fighting," he said. "Not just for us, but for everyone else." Marcus smiled, a real one this time. "When did you get so wise, kid?" In the weeks that followed, the family rebuilt. Marcus returned to teaching, his students greeting him with hugs and a banner that read, "Welcome back, Mr. A." Julian's clients slowly returned, drawn to his renewed passion. Ethan's sketches caught the eye of a local gallery, which offered him a small exhibit. He titled it Truth in Color, dedicating it to his dads. The community rallied too. The rally Julian had organized grew into a nonprofit, Truth Over Hate, focused on supporting families facing discrimination. Ethan became its youngest volunteer, speaking at events and sharing his art. The brick through their window became a story of resilience, not defeat. One crisp December evening, the family walked through the park where it all began. Marcus and Julian held hands, their wedding bands glinting in the fading light. Ethan trailed behind, sketching the scene. His dad's, the pond, the golden leaves. It was the same bench from that imagined moment, now real, carved with their love. Marcus stopped, pulling Julian close. "We're still here," he whispered. Julian smiled, kissing him softly. "Always will be." Ethan looked up, his pencil pausing. He didn't need to draw this moment to keep it. It was etched in his heart. The truth of their family, unshakable, unbreakable, forever.